Supply shifters, when it all changes. Hi, this is Mrs. Ross from TJ, and this video is intended to give you my personal touch when it comes to learning the shifters of supply. First of all, let's do a quick review. Supply and the law of supply. A check for understanding. Now, as we're doing this, hopefully you're going to do this mental inventory that you've got this. First of all, what is real supply? Now, hopefully you guys mentioned the two main components are the willingness and ability to sell something or provide something. Now, what are the different ways to demonstrate supply? What do you remember drawing anything of? Hopefully you talked about or thought about that table, which is the supply schedule, or the graph, where you guys did the curve down the left up to the sky, supply curve. And the third one, how does real supply change with price? And this may be a little bit like a mermaid tale. Remember that little coincidence or little quinky-dink I brought up, where when prices go up, quantity supply goes up. And when prices go down, quantity supply go down. And hopefully you remember why. That we're profit-making missiles. That look, if we can get paid more, we'll work more, for sure. Now, let's get going and talk about something big. So if price increases, quantity supply goes up, what can actually change all supply? First of all, I have to say out loud, what do all those who supply have in common? We have to know this, that all producers use the factors of production, land, labor, and capital to produce goods and services. We just got to know that. We have ingredients, which is the land. We have our workers, because in order to do a lot, we need help. And we need capital. Even if it's just a table, if it's a building, if it's a machine or a computer. Now, we all want to earn a profit. Profit is all the money you get to keep after you've paid your bills. We want to make sure that we can make the most money while keeping our customers. We also want as little waste as possible. Now, if you guys have ever been sent home early at your job because it got slow, that's an efficiency move on their part, because if you're staying there, you're wasting their money. And so as a producer, you should be thinking this way too, because if you're not wasting your money, you get to keep it. Now, not all producers are just affected by price. There are actually 6+ other ways things can change. These are called the supply shifters. So what do we mean by all supply changing? Well, first of all, grab a piece of paper. We need to do these visuals. Supply shifts. When we talk about supply, we mean everybody in the market who's selling the same thing. Now, in Council Bluffs, if we think about hamburgers, we're talking about if you seriously thought about every place you could get a hamburger, not accounting for taste, you're over 85 different sources. Seriously, we've counted them. Now, if somebody comes and goes, those are the kind of things that are going to shift the supply. So when an increase happens, it could increase the total supply or the big S. Okay, so to show an increase, it's going to be very similar to the demand thing you guys just did not that long ago, where you're going to be shifting to the right. Now, I don't say up and down because supply feels weird, because when you move to the right, it actually looks like you're going down, but the quantity increases. And that's the whole point. When you increase supply, you're increasing quantity, and strangely enough, your price goes down. But the idea is you're going to be selling more, so that is not a waste, or that's not a loss for you. Now, if we lose hamburger places, like when Smashburger came briefly and left, then the total supply of hamburgers, or the big S, would go down or to the left, which means quantity would go down closer to zero. And since they're a little bit more scarce, not really, but there's less of them, then price can go up because those other remaining ones can actually charge more. What actually can make such a big change? Enough to impact the big S, or total supply. There are 6+ shifters. And you might say to yourself, Ross, 6+, that's 7. Well, one of them is like a 1.5. So stick with me. And the acronym for this one is tingle, okay? When it tingles, it's working to move the whole supply. Now let's start with the first one. I have a headline here to demonstrate. Future Factory, how technology is transforming manufacturing. Now, knowing that they're putting advanced robotics in there, you start with the supply curve before the robots, and then you say to yourself, how would adding robots impact supply? Would it go up or down? If you're going to add a robot, they don't need breaks, they can work all day, and they aren't unionized. So that means that they can work more, your supply is going to go up, which is a shift to the right, and overall supply is going to increase. Now, of course, if that technology breaks down, it's going to go the other direction. So this is the T in Tingle, is technology. Anytime you throw technology on there, it should make it better. Now, here's a headline. Crop prices declined when fertilizer went up. Now, here's that beginning supply curve again. And how does this impact supply? Well, if fertilizer, the costs go up, that means it's going to cost more to buy the fertilizer and less money can go towards seed or any of the other things. So your supply curve is actually going to go to the left or decrease supply. You might not be able to plant as many fields. Farmers use fertilizer to increase crops, and if it becomes too expensive, they can't afford it. So the input costs have gone up and supply goes down. That's an inverse relationship, but just realize you have one pot of money, and if the things you have to buy get more expensive, you're not going to be able to buy as much. You can't stretch it as much. Okay, here's another headline. Which company is winning the food delivery war? Now, in light of this pandemic, food delivery is huge, right? You've got DoorDash, Grubhub, to say that, the least, the first two. Here's our beginning supply curve for food delivery. How does this war, this idea that so many people, are coming into it, how does this affect supply? Well, of course, it's going to increase the supply of food delivery overall. And so let's go move to the right. This is what we call number of producers. And we're really talking about services here. So when the number of producers goes up, the supply of that, production or services is going to go up too, at least until the pandemic ends, right? Now, part of me thinks that people are going to really like this and they might keep the delivery piece, but who knows? It depends. Now, here's another one. Senate tax bill includes tax break for film producers. Now, this is a few years ago, but it's a tax break. Lots of them are happening these days too. Here's the beginning supply curve. Okay. Now, the question I have for you is, when the Senate basically reduces taxes, what's going to happen to the overall supply curve for movies? If they have more money, they should be able to increase it. So it should go to the right, and that means they're going to be making more films. So when government decreases taxes on production, producers have more money and can do more. This is called government action taxes. Now, the G in Tingle is the one that's a 1.5, because government can take your money, but it also can do the opposite too. So this is the plus. Air Canada to use government subsidies to keep employees on payroll. Now, most of the time, most of the words we use, you are familiar with. This is where one might be a little weird for you. So I will explain it as we go along. Here's the beginning supply curve for airlines, okay? And so when they get a government subsidy, which, by the way, that's when the government gives you money instead of taking it from you, then your supply curve is going to increase. If producers have more money, government action in the terms of subsidies, then supply is going to go up, at least until the pandemic ends. Now, again, here actually is the official definition. A subsidy is like a grant, money given to help certain businesses stay profitable. Now, in terms of this pandemic, everybody's getting them, whether they be short-term loans that actually will be forgiven. They're all like a subsidy. Now, in the past, farmers were definitely the ones who got most of the subsidies, because while they are considered a growth industry, they weren't growing as a whole. In fact, the family farmer was on the decline, and we were seeing corporate farms, the big manless, personless running the farm. And so the government was trying to keep family farms alive, and that's why they gave them subsidies. In light of the pandemic, they're trying to keep the economy going and keep people employed. And so then they hand out money. And so, especially the airlines, which in those tight quarters, a lot of people are choosing not to go because of the quarantine, or they're just scared of getting COVID-19. And so they don't go, and the airlines are bleeding money. They don't have enough. They're losing millions and millions of dollars. So the government bails them out, basically. Okay, so government action can go both ways. You just have to see which way it's going. Okay, now we have two left, the L and the E. Here's the next one. For meat plant workers, virus makes a hard job perilous, which means it's making it worse. Even before the coronavirus began sickening workers, jobs in the meatpacking industry have been considered among the most dangerous in the United States. And now let's add a virus, right? And so here's the beginning supply curve. And knowing that this virus is doing this, how is this going to impact over the supply of this? It's going to increase or decrease. Now I'm going to tell you, it's going to decrease. No matter what's happening, they've had to actually expand the space between people. They've had to do more checks. It's slowing down the process. They probably have had to let some people go. So that means overall supply is going to go down. And so that's impacting labor productivity, because if people are getting sick, they're not working, or their work suffers if they're not feeling well. Now, hopefully they're, checking their temperature, because that so far has been probably one of the easiest things for us to wrap our brain around as to how you can tell when someone has it. And so they've been sending people home if they have a fever. So if labor productivity goes down, your supply goes down. If you train your workers better, not talking about COVID, but if you give them more training, then their labor productivity will go up and your supply will go up. Now, here's the last one. Nebraska businesses prepare to reopen during the pandemic. Now, for a while there, they scaled back. So that was the original S1. Now that they're going to open, then there's going to be this increase in supply of these businesses, all businesses in general. And so it's going to increase. And so what we're talking about here is producer expectations. Businesses are going to go from closed to open, from takeout orders to dine in. And so the producers have to try to decide, are the consumers going to be there? And they have to figure it out beforehand, because they've got to be there in time to capture that. And so when you talk about expectations, you're talking about looking into the future, but making decisions today. And so it's a slippery slope. It's kind of a tough one to do. And some companies are having trouble trying to get people back. But we'll get there. It's just going to take a while. And not everybody's going to want to open at the same time. Now, here's that circular flow model I showed you at the very beginning of this whole unit, supplying the economy. You see the households and the businesses, the factor market, and the product market, right? This is where we're at. So each of these shifters can change the supply for every producer. And because of this, that circular flow will either move faster or slower. And so this is another way to bring this model in, and it should make sense, because whether it's the pandemic or the price of the input costs or the technology or whatever it is, those movements, mostly being the purple, but definitely the green, are going to either ramp up and go faster, or they're going to slow down and people are going to start getting worried. So with any combination, supply can change. I put delta in there because I was running out of space. Here's the 6+. It could be technology. If you increase your technology, your supply is going to go up faster, efficient, bigger, better, faster, right? If the input costs go up, your supply could go down. So less money to buy ingredients means you're not going to be able to buy as much. You can't make as much. The number of producers. So if the number of firms goes up, if there's more people out there, then overall supply is going to go up. And that is definitely one. Government action times 2. So if taxes go up, then supply is going to go down because they're taking money away from you. If subsidies go up, then supply is going to go up because they're going to give you money, which means, that's how that goes. Labor productivity. Now, we just talked about this, the quality of the work. If they're sick, if they're not feeling well, they're not going to do well. You know this. It works for you too. And so hopefully that makes sense. And then the last one is producer expectations. And really, it should have been the E that was purple. If future looks bright, then they're going to be ramping up their supply and it's going to go up. Now, this constant motion of supply, it ebbs and flows. It goes up and it goes down. And like I said before, if you've ever been let go early because it was slow, you know what I'm talking about. Producers try their best to anticipate the needs of the consumer, but they hopefully don't overplan and waste too much of their money. So hopefully you've learned more about the movement of all supply, because as a consumer, it is smart to understand the trends of supply so you can get the best deal. If you've ever gone and shopped the clearance area, or you can tell when certain things are going to go on sale, you can make better purchases. As a producer, it's essential to understand all of this in order to capture the most profit and to be able to grow your business. If you want to know more about supply, there's plenty of videos out there. This is one that I suggest. And so check it out if you want to. It's been a pleasure explaining this to you. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, contact me at jross2@cbcsd.org.